My name is Maddy Prior, and I've been working in the band Steeleye Span for 50 years now.
The name, how did that come about?
Martin Carthy was looking through a book of ballads and of songs, and the name Steeleye Span is a name of John Span, and Steeleye is a nickname for hard man. And he said, that's a great name. And Tim said, that's the name of our band. And we had a vote, and he cheated, and we got it.
So you started off 50 years ago, very much with folk music. And where did you get your material from?
Well, all sorts of places. I mean, we spent time in the Sharp House, but we'd also Tim and I had been working around the folk clubs for like 4 or 5 years. So we'd heard lots and lots of songs. And we knew a huge repertoire of songs that we didn't necessarily sing, but we knew them.
Why did you decide to develop the band as a folk rock band rather than just a straight folk band?
Well, part of that was to do with Ashley, of course, because he could get the money to get equipment, which the rest of us didn't know anything about equipment anyway. So he kind of like moved it into that, and it was the first opportunity. We'd been hoping for an opportunity to do something else, because we'd kind of run out of steam a bit with the duo. And because it was only Tim that played. I played banjo, but it wasn't very useful to us, so it sort of just fell off the cart, as it were. And so we were looking to work with something bigger, but you couldn't afford it on the folk scene, so it had to be something else, and that's what this worked.
And do you feel you've sold out, having kind of lost your folk roots as such? Or
well, I never had any folk roots, so it's kind of like it's all fabricated from my life, from the work I've done. It's not. I don't have a background in folk music at all. A lot of people now, a lot of young players were raised in the folk festivals and traditions of that age, but I never had any of that. So each song we found in books or on record. We went through the whole library of Cecil Sharp House listening for songs, Tim and I, which was quite a stretch. It took us a few weeks, and we weren't very good readers of music, so a lot of the tunes kind of were fabricated based on something we thought they might be. So it's always been a collating job for us. We find some words that we like, and then we'd kind of find a tune or make a tune.
Now, you've had various producers, Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, also Mike Batt.
Yeah.
Were they easy or difficult people to work with? Did they help you?
No, they were very easy. But Mike was just slightly surprised by what we did, because he didn't know anything about folk music, as most people don't. So they think they know a bit of it because they've heard a few tunes at school, but actually it's quite a complex sort of music and has its own vocabulary of vocal technique, which is quite different from say classical, which is a very particular kind of technique.
And I also understand that with a couple of your recordings, one you've had David Bowie participated. He played, what did he play?
Sax.
He played sax.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, Rick Kemp knew Mick Ronson, was a friend of him. He knew him as a young man. And so we wanted a sax, and we said, well, David, well, why not? So we asked.
And the other one, Peter Sellers.
Well, same thing, really. We'd done a track, New York Girls, and Bob said for some unaccountable reason that it needed a ukulele. Well, a ukulele was a very unfashionable instrument at that point. So we said, well, has anybody got one? No. Does anybody know anybody's got one? No. And then Bob said, well, Peter Sellers plays a ukulele. And there was this sort of long silence. Then we said, well, it's worth a try, isn't it? And so we asked him, and he said yes. I don't think anybody had ever asked him to play the ukulele before.
As I walked down through Chatham Street, a fair maid I did meet. She asked me to see her home, she lived in Bleecker Street. And when we got to Bleecker Street, we stopped at 44. Her mother and her sister there to meet her at the door.
awful strong, my head went round and round.
And then we had another drink before we sat to eat. The liquor was so awful strong, I quickly fell asleep.
Come on, Min. Play that modern banjo, Min.
When I awoke next morning, I had an aching head. There was I, Jack, all alone, stark naked in me bed.
My gold watch and my pocketbook and lady friend were gone, and there was I, Jack, all alone, stark naked in the room.
On looking round this little room, there's nothing I could see but a woman's shift and apron that were no use to me.
With a flour barrel for a suit of clothes down Cherry Street forlorn, there Martin Churchill took me in and sent me round Cape Horn.
Peter Sellers having fun on the ukulele on that track from Steeleye Span. That is New York Girls. I next asked Maddy Prior, 50 years on, what were her highlights of Steeleye Span?
Well, it depends on what you're talking. I mean, the work itself has been fantastic. I mean, the big ballads, particularly the ones that Bob Johnson brought in. He brought in lots of big ballads, and the whole repertoire of Steeleye rests very largely on those. But that was, so the music itself, and some songs are sort of like beautiful. There's Lark in the Morning, which I actually learnt at school. There's Tam Lin, which we're doing at the moment, which is a fantastic piece of work that Bob put together. And but the other side of it is that we did 5 days at the LA Forum, 5 nights at the LA Forum with Jethro Tull. Their gig, they were, but you know, 17,500 people every night. It was sort of, you know, we'd just come out of folk clubs almost, you know. So that was a bit of fun.
Yeah.
And just touring in other places was always good. I mean, going to America, the audiences were just so different to an English audience that we kind of went, oh wow, this is good.
Any particular favourite song you've recorded?
Well, as I say, Tam Lin, Lark in the Morning, when I was on horseback, there's so many actually, and I love them all. There's not many I don't like.
Now, over the years, there have been a lot of changes of personnel. I think you're the only surviving one from 1969 in the band. I mean, how have you dealt with that, and has that been
well
difficult?
I mean, we've always been moving from song to song anyway. It's not like we've got an overall kind of idea. I mean, it's kind of settled in some ways to be in big ballads with riffs, but that's not the entire story. So and it's changing now. We've got a couple of songs on the new album which aren't like anything we've done before, and that's what we're sort of that's what keeps it exciting. And also when new people come in, they bring their musical skills to it. We don't want them to do what the person before them's done if they're replacing somebody. You want them to base it on what went before to some degree, but then they have to find their own take on it, because otherwise it becomes very stilted, because people playing what somebody else plays is not the same thing as what the person did.
You mentioned earlier on about playing at folk festivals, and of course the big one is at Cambridge. Is folk music today still as relevant to younger people as perhaps it would have been 30 or 40 years ago?
Well, I think it's very relevant to young players, because there's enormous numbers of young players coming up and they love it and they play. But whether there's an audience of young people, I don't know yet. I think that's yet to be discovered, if you like.
I mean, there are artists like Frank Turner who describe themselves as folk or folk rock, but very much he writes his own songs. But then again, his last album is all about songs of historical women. So
well, that's kind of what. I mean, the folk world has never been traditional based entirely. There's always been a bit of traditional, but it's actually quite hard to sing traditional songs, and particularly big ballads. And that's what's great about being in a band, because you can structure them like a play, which with a dramatic sort of style to them. So there are scenes, and so they have different tunes for different scenes and different feelings for different words, whereas with two of you that's quite hard to do. Some people can do it singing solo, but it's you've got to be very skilled.
And what about your children? Are they musical?
Yes, my daughter is she's a stunning singer and teacher now. She's done she was 10 years working in heavy rock, and she has such skills for singing that she's amazing. Black Medic too, you should look at and listen to, because it's amazing. But she stopped at that. She went to university to do speech and language science. So she actually knows everything about the voice now, and she's brilliant. My son, he's into hip hop. That's his thing, and he's very good at that. He's kind of working at it, and he also does personal training and stuff there. Like people do lots of different things.
Yeah. Maddy Prior, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.